Good morning, everyone, and welcome to ASPIRE23. My name is Grant Primo, here along with Hani Kadri and Jeff Suwin at Velosio, and we're here to present for the future of on-premise Microsoft Dynamics solutions, and in this case, navigating the road ahead. So again, as mentioned, we have myself, Grant Primo. I'm a senior consultant on our GP practice.
I'm Jeff Suwin. I'm Director of Solution Management. I also am a Dynamics SL person.
And I'm Hani Kadri. I'm a senior consultant with the BC Enterprise team, and I also deal with Navision and Nav.
Thank you, Jeff and Hani. So if you're in this session, hopefully you've heard either Nav, GP, or SL, and that means you're currently here for the on-the-ground track for Aspire. So what that means is you're hopefully a customer or a client for us that is just beginning your cloud journey, whether you're already involved in Azure in some sense, but this is going to be the first session for this track. Now we have 3 more sessions that are going to be available throughout today. And again, you can always view these sessions after the Aspire event has completed. For GP and SL specifically, you're welcome to stay for all 4 tracks, including this session. And then Hani later on will talk about the difference with that 4th and final track, where that's more geared towards GP and SL, and he'll speak a little bit about what you folks that might have Nav should do. Now, first, before we get into the specific products for the Microsoft on-premise ERPs, we did want to talk about the different life cycles, initially starting with SQL Server, as we're now seeing that many of our clients are either moving to a new ERP or just simply upgrading their existing environment to ensure that they stay within the mainstream and especially the extended support for their product. As you can see with this table, upcoming next year in July is going to be the end of extended support for SQL Server 2014. And from our perspective, that's typically where we see a larger initiative from the IT staff really wanting to ensure that their SQL environment is very secure. You'll certainly be able to view the different dates for the products before and after SQL Server 2014. But of course, we did want to call that out as, again, we're seeing that. Now, as we move on to the Windows Server life cycles, you'll notice it's somewhat similar. In this case, the Windows Server 2012 end of extended support is coming up this year on October 10th. So that's certainly something to be thinking about if your environment is currently hosted on Windows Server 2012 and really wanting to ensure that no matter what you do, you want to stay secure and you want your data not to be compromised. So we certainly recommend reaching out to your account manager if you have any questions about your server or SQL versions. Now we'll get into the product-specific ERPs, in this case for Dynamics GP. So first, hello everyone. I've been presenting for the past couple of Aspires, so hopefully I'm a familiar face to you, but as usual, I always like to cover the Dynamics GP life cycles, as every year, of course, there's going to be some updates. But we did initially want to call out, different from last year, that officially Dynamics GP 2015 all the way through 2018 R2 and prior, of course, are now in extended support. So what that means is you're not able to get any quote bug fixes. Now, again, you're able to get support from Microsoft. They'll try to help you out as much as possible, but excuse me, your next step is really going to be upgrading Dynamics GP or potentially looking at a new ERP. Now, specifically with extended support, you can still purchase more users and different modules with GP. But again, as mentioned, your support's going to continue, but they're not going to provide any specific fixes for your version. So in order to stay current, they would like you to move to the Dynamics GP Modern Lifecycle. As you can see in the table below, since our Aspire session last year, Dynamics GP 2013 and 2013 R2 are now out of that extended support. So we highly recommend at least upgrading to get current as you look to your future. You can also notice some of the future extended support dates for GP 2015 and 2015 R2, 2016 and 2016 R2, and of course, lastly, 2018 and 2018 R2. Now, again, that's the fixed life cycle. Hopefully this doesn't apply to too many of you, as you're ideally on the modern life cycle. So we like to call this the Dynamics GP 18.x. That means you're on the modern life cycle, if you've heard us refer to this in your upgrades or versions. Right now, Dynamics GP 18.5 is currently released, and just a couple days ago, they did release the June update for tax updates, regulatory updates, and various hotfixes as there's been reported items throughout the year. So with the modern lifecycle, your way to stay current is to be on one of the past 3 releases. So again, there are 3 every year. As long as you're on the current release or the 2 prior, you would be considered current with your Dynamics GP implementation. Now, of course, Velosio is always going to be there to help you out, but you'll certainly hear from us. The best way to stay secure and to stay current, of course, is to upgrade as soon as possible. Now, outside of the modern life cycle for GP, we're mostly here again to talk about the future of on-premise ERPs. Of course, for me, Dynamics GP. And luckily, just as I mentioned last year, Microsoft continues to commit to having mainstream support to 2028 and beyond. And that includes yearly releases through 2028 as well. So you can still, of course, expect a GP 18.6, 18.7, 18.8, all the way up until at least 2028, which is always great news. Now, one thing we do like to call out is that existing customers for this 2028 and beyond won't have any changes to your enhancement costs, and you're not going to be limited to purchasing licenses or modules with GP. However, for new customers, again, hopefully this isn't applying to any of you, but it could certainly impact various clients if you're not within your Microsoft support, as up till 2025, new customers are not going to be able to purchase perpetual licenses for GP. So that's starting on April 1st of 2025. And then on April 1st of 2026, no new subscription licenses are going to be able to be purchased. Now, ahead of that, this upcoming October, there are also some enhancement plan rate increases. Again, this is for new customers only. So if you're an existing client and you're running GP, you don't have to worry about anything regarding these rate increases, but we do always like to call it out where the enhancement plan is going to increase from 17 to 18%, and then the advantage plan is going to increase from 19% to 20%. And finally, I wanted to focus on your future with Dynamics GP. A lot of you have probably heard, of course, me speak over the years, and if you've been talking with your consultants or your account manager, there have been these conversations, hopefully internally as well, about what your future looks like as an organization and what your future looks like from Dynamics GP. The first thing I will call out again is that these thrice yearly releases from Microsoft will ensure that there's a strong commitment to that GP user base. It's something we've heard year over year, and it's really nice to see Microsoft enforcing that and proving their commitment to our very large GP client base, because although we certainly want you to be thinking about your future, about your next, there really is not a lot of reason to start focusing about knowing that you need to get off as soon as possible, because for GP, that's just not going to be the case. Now, again, as mentioned, if you're on a version that is going to be not supported very soon, or if you're on a version that's not supported right now, GP upgrades can absolutely be a cost-effective ways to modernize GP. There are, of course, new features, especially in those versions that are not in support, that we feel would be very useful with GP. However, as mentioned, it's also a great opportunity to get on the latest and greatest operating system for Windows Server as well as SQL Server. Now, we would be remiss not to mention our cloud team, which again is in the on-the-ground track for our on-premise ERPs, and migrating to our Velosio cloud using the Azure backbone can really help you save money on infrastructure while you prepare for your next ERP. That's always the great first step, that I say our clients can take whenever we're having a kickoff for our GP upgrades or just talking about what their future looks like. It's a great way to have some of those old servers that might be a little out of date, just to have the Velosio cloud fill that gap with GP as you look towards your next ERP. And of course, from this meeting, whether you're a GP, an SL, or a Navision client, please talk with your account manager to discuss your options, as of course they're much more familiar with you than myself, Hani, or Jeff, and we certainly want you to be prepared for what your next is. I'll finish my section by saying that of course Velosio will support you, so no matter what version you're on, although we'd love for you to be as current as possible, we're still going to be here to support you always. Thank you, and I think we're on to Jeff next.
All right. Thank you very much, Grant. Great information. And what Grant's giving to you right in that last slide is something that applies to all of the solutions, whether you're an SL, NAV, or GP. The right people to talk to are your account managers. You do have opportunities, whether you decide to take your existing solution to the cloud or you decide to move to a new ERP solution. Obviously, here at Velosio, we're here to support you the best way that we can. So my presentation is going to be a little bit shorter here, getting us through what's going on in the SL world. So the question is, what's new? Well, later this month, we will be releasing a new version of Dynamics SL. It's SL 2018 CU10. Yes, we're at cumulative update 10. We've had a bunch, as you can tell. And so that is now scheduled for the June release. As we've done in the last several years here, these type of releases now are really just focused on bug fixes. So we're looking at new bug fixes that come in, any previous ones that we've had there, and making sure that we're addressing those with the releases. With this particular release, we actually did add additional support, which means that we were able, now SQL Server 2022 is out, we were able to allow it to officially release and go through our testing. So as we're doing our testing, we're making sure, yep, this version of SL 2018 CU10 officially does support SQL Server 2022. So if you're in a situation where you might be purchasing a new server and you were wondering about that, that's definitely the version that you want to be upgrading to. We also, as GP does as well, we're getting ready to release our quarterly tax updates, which will be happening in the June timeframe as well. So that's what's new and what's about to release here in the June timeframe. What's going to be in there? Well, we're not going to go through all of it, but you can see a listing of the different modules, payables, receivables, and so forth. And just so you know, as you're going through the solution, we do still have a team at Microsoft here for the Dynamics SL team. We are reviewing any bugs that come into the solution. We are reviewing them, taking them into account, and coming up with solutions for things that make sense for us to continue to move forward. So you do have a chance, if you're in the June timeframe and you are seeing an issue in their latest version of SL, and you'd like to submit that, going through the standard submit process, please feel free to update those, send this to me. We can send it to Microsoft support, and that will get to the Dynamics SL team, and we'll see what we can do about addressing any of those issues as we move forward here. Now, what's going to happen next? Well, the next release is going to be in December. As we have had in the past, we usually have 2 a year. This will be the last release for Dynamics SL 2018. It'll be SL 2018 CU11. And what will be in that release? Well, just as in this release, there will be hot fixes. The big difference will be that this is going to be a year-end update solution. So we don't know what those changes might be right now. Again, if you're doing anything that's W-2 related, 1099, magnetic media, that's definitely a reason why you want to keep on track and make sure that you're applying those items to you. But again, this, as always, has been for the last several years. This is only for Dynamics SL 2018, where we'll be doing any year-end updates. One thing to note, if you are still on an older version of SL, and we spoke about this last year at Aspire as well, we at the Plumline company, which works with Velosio here, also have the ability to do year-end updates for 2011 and 2015. So if you're still happen to be on those older versions and you do need those year-end updates, we have the opportunity to do that. One thing to keep in mind is that after this release in December, Dynamics SL is moving from mainstream support to extended support. And Grant just did a great job here describing that, but just at a really high level. So this last release, the CU11 release coming out in December, after that time frame in January, we will move from mainstream to extended. And as Grant said, that means that support will still be there. Support is not going away. Support will be there through 2028 of the Dynamics SL product. So it's not like that's going to go away. But as Grant noted, there's going to be no fixes available. So we're not going to be adding any fixes. There will be no year-end updates, no cumulative updates will be added as well. So there's nothing planned for the SL 2018 version going forward. If you are an existing customer and hey, you've decided that you need some additional users in your process as you start looking to the cloud and you need a few users or you need a different module, that's still going to be available to you. So that's still going to be available to you. But again, no hot fix or anything around that area. So just to kind of bring it back again, what are the things that you should be thinking about? Again, you do have 2 more releases for SL28 coming out. 28, the one in December, will be that final one before we go from mainstream to extended support. Grant did a great job of explaining that really the things that you should be thinking about, whether you decide to move SL to the cloud. We've got a cloud team that can help you out to start your transition to the cloud, and maybe you just want to move SL there initially. Looking at other solutions as well. Obviously, Velosio has a vast array of solutions that we can offer to you. So talk to the person that you work with here at Velosio, who is the person that can help you, advise you, and say, yep, let's see where we're at. Let's see what your options are. Let's see what you're doing in SL. Are you project focused, distribution focused, just financials? They can work with you to understand what those are and decide what might be the next best step for you. So with that, I appreciate your time. And now I'm going to go ahead and move it over to Honey. Honey?
Thank you, everybody. I'm going to be talking about Dynamics Nav, or formerly known as Navision. And as you guys are all familiar, the new version of Dynamics Nav, there's a new software from Microsoft called Business Central, or BC as we like to call it. And it's largely built around Nav and the way it was. So just a little bit of a history before we go down this table. Nav or Navision has been out for over 25 years. The versions that folks are really still used to seeing are Nav 4.0, 5.0 in 2009. That was what we used to call Classic. And then the role-tailored client came in with Nav 2013. 2009 had a role-tailored client, and then the real big revision was around 2013 and 2013 R2. So 2013 R2 really paved the way for 2013 R2, 15, 16, 17, 18. 18 was the last one that actually looked like that, got installed like that, and it was sort of more, it was exclusively on-prem. You could get it with a subscription license, or you could get it with the old licensing model. But with the advent of 2015, 2016, and 17, 18, you had what's called a web client. You could actually open a browser. You could be on an iPad, on the Safari browser, which came out much later. You could be on an Android tablet. You could be on a Windows tablet, and you could sort of open Nav or Navision through a browser. It would sort of look a little bit less feature-friendly. You would click a button, it would take a second, and it would still, but you could still run an account schedule, or you could still do a lot of functionality, especially viewing only functionality, not doing full functional data entry and things like that on screen. What happened with 2018 was that was the last version that was sold with the on-premise model. And Business Central came out, and Business Central, the initial versions of Business Central, feature-wise, were based off 2018. Nav 2017 and 2018 actually did have more bank integrations. There were like Yodlee feeds. You could download your bank statements very seamlessly. You could do it off the websites, and you could do a lot more integrations in terms of APIs. So there has been a lot of technological change from the backend, and you've seen GP and SL grow the same way, where you had to pay a developer or you had to pay a third-party company to do a lot of integrations, data exchange. Now it was coming a lot out of the box. Now with the new BC, which I'm going to be talking about in a couple minutes, a lot more is available, and there's now a full app source. So coming back to what Grant said, and coming back to what Jeff has also mentioned a few times, what is the difference between the whole mainstream support and extended support? So as of right now, if you look at the last value in the middle column, NAV 2018 cumulative update 60. So if you have NAV 2018 and you went live with it, let's say somewhere around 2017 onwards, Microsoft comes out with a 10-year support plan, right? So for 5 years, you will have mainstream support. And for the remaining 5 years, you have what's called extended support. So NAV 2018, even that product, which was the last Navision release, has now received its hot fixes and cumulative update this January. So you're basically on your own in terms of if you find a bug that can be reported and things like that. But Microsoft themselves are not preemptively going to take a new feature that they're going to release to Business Central and going to give back, sort of backpedal that to anybody on an older version of NAV. It's for the newer versions, and you can find a workaround for it, and you can contact us to help with that. So the concept is the service packs are not going to be back released. New features are not going to be available to use. And for anybody that's on NAV 2013 R2, where I said that the sort of the role-tailored client became a little bit more evident, sort of roles-based visualizations became more evident, and you could do a lot more with permissions and things like that. Though they will still be in extended support from 2023 this year, all the way for the next 5 years into 2028. Now, what does all this mean? So extended support for NAV clients, you can still purchase more modules, you can still switch, and you can buy more users, you can upgrade and downgrade like that. You will get support, you will get an option of doing a lot more paid intervention, but it's not like you can report to your partner or you can report directly to Microsoft that I don't like, for example, the tax rate changes, or for example, one of the options that recently I came across as well, Velosio also, was due to Brexit. Now the VAT system in the UK has changed, and there was a UK sub. Well, I'm sorry, but Navision was never written around that unless you've sort of had a UK British company prior to the VAT being adopted and things like that. So there might be regulatory things and changes that force you sort of into, well, I need a better tax system, or VAT changes and things like that. In terms of what goes away, well, security updates are always provided. And Jeff and Grant mentioned that as well. For 10 years, security updates are always provided. The ability to request non-security changes goes away, and paid support is available. Now, in terms of should you move now, should you wait a couple more years? And the decision really comes back to now your IT folks, right? Most of the people that are using Navision, and it's quite popular, but it's not. I don't think it depends on the industry and the vertical, but there have been a lot of people who have been using Navision hosted, meaning on a private cloud, or even if they've bought a Microsoft Cloud subscription. But again, at the end of the day, Navision has to run on SQL. So what Grant showed in his first couple of slides, and you're more than welcome to roll the video back and take a look at it later, your SQL has to have sort of an end of mainstream support. So Navision or NAV runs on SQL. Navision, all that SQL also runs on a server, right? So your NAV license and your NAV usage on screen is tied to the end of life sort of your SQL and end of life of that server. So if your cloud provider in somewhere in the States or in Canada, or it could be worldwide hosted, if they say, well, we're upgrading our server, please give me the NAV DVD, and I want to go up to the newest Windows server capability. And well, you're like, well, I can't install NAV, right? So it's not going to be like that, but there are instances where people are trying to use Windows 11 and they're trying to use the web client from NAV 2015. And there's been a change with certain browsers in Windows 11, which is now the most common laptop feature or desktop feature. People still buy desktops, but not so much. And you're going to get into that sort of cycle more and more again. And it's going to be more prevalent in the upcoming years. So there will be certain reasons where your functionality on screen, your users, your manufacturing users, whether you have just in-office users, don't really have a need to move, but you should be looking into options, and please speak to your CAM about that. Now, in terms of data migration, so what can Velosio do to assist you? So there's two sort of angles when we talk about assessments, and I'll get to that in a couple of minutes. But there is the concept of, well, if I move, what is going to be my costing, and how's all my investment and my existing licensing going to sort of evolve into the new world? And there are changes, right? So for details, I'd like to defer that off to the CAM you can speak to. And our sales folks at Velosio are great at describing the details and your options. And obviously, the second part is data migration. What happens to all my data in Nav? And the same goes for GP and SL, right? The GP to SL, your data is still there in the same tables. Are you going to be able to sort of take that into the Business Central world? Are you going to be sort of being able to export that to Excel and keep it for yourself? So there's a whole little sort of exercise that we can do with you. And we at Velosio will be happy to sort of perform that assessment for you and go through the options with you. In terms of incentives, so again, it's more or less a concept of, if you are current on your maintenance and you're still on NAV 2013, or even if you're on NAV 2015 or 18, you do have incentives. Now, again, incentives depend on the geography, depend on the region, depend on your license count. So again, that's more of a detailed discussion with your CAM. But there are incentives, and I'm just going to go through the basics of what is available in Business Central. And this applies to anybody, right? You could be coming from a GP, you could just want to know some basics. So in the further upcoming 3 sessions, they are going to be comparing the features and the contrasts of Business Central with other softwares. There's going to be upgrade assessment talks. But I wanted to sort of address the folks that are, well, I see this as NAV 2.0, and why should I move, or why should I change, right? Why should I go through the incurred cost? And there are a lot of changes. And the one thing that's going to sort of be a little bit of a discussion point, and you do need to sort of internally figure out and noodle with your own management and your users, is the named user change. So with the existing NAVs, in the existing NAV world, Dynamics NAV world, your concept of concurrent licenses was such that if you had 20 licenses, but you had 25, 28 employees, not everybody came in, or not everybody was logged in at the same time, then everybody could share those 20 licenses. Now, in the BC world, everybody gets the named license. They did that for a couple of reasons. Obviously, because now everybody in Azure and everybody is tied to Office 365. And we would highly recommend, from a Velosio point of view, that you speak to your CAM. And we highly recommend to take full advantage of the Microsoft stack. And again, this is another thing that's going to be not so evident based on YouTube videos or any discussions you've had with your peers over the past few years, because people are still sort of waking up and understanding this. But as time goes by, your Office 365, your Outlook integration, your Power BI integration, your simple Excel integration, it's going to be so integrated into your BC experience. It's going to be sort of second nature. Teams, for example. Microsoft Teams, you can do a lot of sharing of documents with non-licensed folks within Teams. So within the licensing model in Business Central, the really cool or standout feature that a lot of people don't know about, and maybe you've just heard at a very high level, is, well, there's a full paid member, right? For example, there's a full license, and it depends if you need manufacturing or service management, in which case you get bumped up to the premium. But there is something called a device license and a team member. A device license generally is about, I would say, about half, if you want to take a rough estimate, a device license is half the cost of a full license. And the easiest way to sort of explain that is for barcode guns or RF guns or any kind of scanners or any kind of warehouse or manufacturing machines that sort of feed into Business Central through an API or software, but they're not really logging in. Like that terminal of that scanner, even if it's running Windows, or if it has a touchscreen LCD on a 10-inch screen, which is common now, it's really filling information on warehouse shipments, or it's doing some kind of picking or giving you some kind of information on the output being created, or let's say it's a time entry machine. It's really feeding some data in from BC Live, and it's really taking the input off the touchscreen and it's putting it back into BC. So device licenses don't need a full basically user license, which helps in cost. The one that's really helpful is team member. Now, this is about, I would say, close to about 15% of the cost. So about 5 times less cost than a full user. And without going to all of this later on, the concept of a team member is it's those people that were really never doing data entry into Nav, right? Or Business Central. So the concept here is it's a read-only user, but the read-only user really can do some changes in BC, right? So for example, if you have customer ledger entry, so how does a customer ledger entry get made? A customer ledger entry is a valid receivable. Well, so you want just somebody in the collections desk who does cold calling and says, please send me the money. Why is there a delay? And they spoke to somebody and they want to just update the customer ledger entry, right? And they want to just update the due date. Well, that's not an issue anymore, right? You can update that with the team member license who's costing you 1/5 of the way. You can do timesheet entry if you use jobs module. You can create, so you can start, edit, or delete a sales quote. So the salespeople are going to be happy with that. They can just look at the customers. They cannot add a new customer and do changes on the customer card specifically. The other big thing that's really neat, and if you've never seen that, and that really came out with a little bit of flavor in NAV 2017 onwards, is workflows. I need a hierarchy. If somebody's going on vacation, then somebody else needs to be delegated just an approval. Anytime we have a purchase order in excess of $10,000 for whatever GL expense, well, it needs to be authorized by 2 people. So the workflow approver can look at the purchase order document, can look at an attached PDF, can sort of click on it and actually approve or reject with a note that, yes, I don't approve this, or I do. And for that, you can also get away with the team member licensing. So there are many instances. It's more of a what you do today with your Dynamics NAV. And the same thing goes for GP or SL, current processes. And it's really a rethink and a remapping of how much can I get away with not giving people full licenses. And moving on to the next slide. So basically what we recommend doing for existing customers, and even if you're a prospective customer and you're not a customer of Velosio right now, but you're on Dynamics Nav and you're looking to sort of move. So there's sort of a concept or a term that's called re-implementation. So the concept is if you're moving from Nav 2009 Classic, or if you're moving from an older version of Nav, if you're heavily customized, even minorly customized or modified with developments, the concept is, should we just give you the new software in Business Central out of the box? It's got a lot more bells and whistles. So it's got a lot more features of today's world, and you will get the latest one. And we should sort of tell you to sort of test drive that with nothing on, right? And the concept here is, how much can you use out of the box? The assessment that we do, what I referenced on the slide, is that as part of our assessment and part of our sort of our expertise here, is we can use what's called the NAV toolkit. So if you are specifically a Dynamics NAV customer, irrespective of version, there is a certain sequence and a sort of a order of operations we have to take, depending on your version, depending on your data, depending on your years of customization and your level of custom tables and things like that. We're not talking about processes here. We're just talking about data. There will be a sort of a step path that we're going to have to hop a few times. So that NAV toolkit has been made available by Microsoft for existing NAV customers to sort of come into Business Central. And we can determine how much of that we need to use. Or you may just say, hey, I really like Business Central out of the box, and I don't really want to utilize the actual customization. I want to actually buy an ISV app source. Now, the other great thing with Business Central is your customization in the area of prepayments, in the area of warehousing, manufacturing, or simple cosmetic change, right? You may have just moved fields around. All of that stuff can be done on your own in BC, and there's obviously a video and a whole session on comparing Business Central with any other sort of solution. The other option is, should you just go to the app source and abandon your existing customization and just buy buy an actual app. It's just like having an app on your Android or having an app on your iPhone, and many are free that allow certain enhancements, and many of them are paid, right? And then there's great vendors that we work with. You can speak to your CAM about what you need, and they will suit you. So the concept also is, should you just go with base Business Central and then bolt on an ISV solution? It increases your flexibility. It also increases your scalability during mergers, sales, and purchases. A lot of folks are upgrading, or a lot of people would like to sell the business, but they don't want to sell it with an older Dynamics NAV instance. They want to be basically on Business Central so that they can market themselves better. So there's lots of options for Q&A here. Please speak to your CAM, and please speak to your salesperson at Velosio, and we'll sort of try to go down the path of what is your existing customizations, third-party solutions that you have right now. Can they be moved into the API cloud layer, which is the application layer within Business Central out of the box? A lot of things like banking are already included by Microsoft, so you don't really need to buy an ISV solution for that. And basically interactions of transactions between companies. You may have a multi-company instance, and glad to help you with any other further questions when the sales comes in. And that's it for me.